The Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show is sponsored by Accunet Mortgage, an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 255368, and Accunet Realty Advisors, which is a separate company from but still affiliated with Accunet Mortgage.
Welcome to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show, getting you inside information on buying, selling, and financing your home with expert advice from Accunet Mortgage and Realty's Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. I'm Brian Wickert, the owner and president of Accunet Mortgage and also the broker over at Accunet Realty Advisors, which really doesn't do any transactions, by the way, but we're just there to give you advice and try to be helpful, maybe hook you up with a realtor to help you buy your house or sell one. And here with me today is the soon-to-be 31-year-old David Wickert, Chief Millennial Consultant. Happy birthday, Eve, David.
Thanks, Dad.
And also happy birthday to my much older sister, Beth Wickert, up there in the Oconto Falls metropolitan area. I won't tell you how much older she's going to be than me, but a few years.
Okay.
All right. If you've got a question or comment, you can call or text us on the Accunet Mortgage Talk and text line, which is 414-799-1620. Well, I was pleasantly surprised to get a call, or maybe it was an email, actually, from Nick Timoreos, who is the Wall Street Journal reporter, now lives in Washington, D.C. David and I first met him in New York City.
Yeah.
On a kind of a call that we made and got lucky enough to meet him. Well, now he covers.
His title is Chief Economics Correspondent.
Ooh, Chief Economics Correspondent.
It's pretty good.
So Nick calls me up. He says, hey, I'm working on a story, because normally he's just hobnobbing with Jerome Powell.
That'd be the Fed chairman.
The Fed chairman, and talking about what the Fed's going to do. More on that later. But he says, I'm writing an article on the impact on the big drop in rates in the real economy. So, Brian, do you have some time to talk to me about how this 1% drop in mortgage rates?
Yeah.
Because a year ago, mortgage rates were 4.875, if you're willing to pay a half a point. And now they're kind of floating back up to about the 3.875 range. But let's just call it a 1% drop. How is that impact? How big of a stimulus is that, Brian, on the housing market? And I said, well, Nick, you're not going to believe this, but here in the 5-county Milwaukee metro area, and I did a little homework, and also in the 9-county Chicago metropolitan area, home sales this year are actually lower. In fact, in the 5-county Milwaukee metro area, we're off by 1.8% in terms of the number of homes and condos sold. I combined those together.
So not so much on the stimulus.
Not so much on the stimulus. And in Chicago, the same thing, single family and condos are down 1.1%. So what the heck?
Yeah.
And, you know, my other observation for him was that in southeastern Wisconsin, last year, in 2018, the median sales price was $210,000 in the Milwaukee metro area. That's for kind of a mishmash of single family. $210. This year, the median sales price is $230.
So any drop in rate's going to get gobbled up because you got to pay more.
You got it. And so the net savings for the person buying the same house, and I kept property taxes the same, because I don't know if you know this, David, but if you look at a property tax bill for a home, they're not going up.
No.
They're staying the same or going down.
Thank you, municipalities. Keep it that way.
So I kept that level. The person buying today, despite the fact that the rate is a full 1% lower, they would only be saving $42.23 a month because of the higher
I believe scientists would call that correlation without causation.
You think so? Well, I just think it doesn't matter, because, and then I hooked them up with, by the way, the payment last year, if you had $350 in monthly property taxes, would have been $1,471, including some estimate for homeowners insurance and PMI. I used 10% down.
That's fine. $1,471.
$1,471, and now this year it would be $42 less, which is like $1,420 something.
Okay.
So it's a distinction without a difference, is I think the word we're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, but the people buy houses for personal reasons.
That's the other thing that I emailed him back with. I said, it's all about demographics. And I did hook him up with, and I don't know if they connected, one of our first-time buyers from earlier this year when I issued her a pre-approval letter in January at 4.75.
That was the going rate.
Yep. And then she bought in June, and we snagged her a rate of 3.99. And I said, talk to Heidi and see if she would have.
If it had anything to do with anything.
Exactly. Did it have anything to do with interest rates? And I talked to Heidi then after I offered the interview to her, and she said, yeah, I would have bought at 4.75. I just needed a house for me and my daughter.
Right.
So the interest rate didn't matter.
I mean, it helps.
Well, nobody's going to turn down the lower rate.
Right. Would you like less for your tank of gas? Yes, I would. Thank you. But it's not. I still need gas in my car.
Now, one other thing I just did before we went on the air live here is I looked at what has happened to sales in the 500,000 and up price range. And the answer to that, we're out of time. All right. I'll give you the answer to that. I think you're going to be surprised. When we come back, I'll give you that answer. And we're also going to talk about the recently released federal deficit numbers and how they actually do impact or could impact mortgage rates. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on AM 620 WTMJ.
Getting you through the home buying process. Welcome back to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
All right, before the break, we were talking about has the big drop in interest rates over the last year stimulated home buying, and the fact that I shared with Nick Tamareos from the Wall Street Journal was not in southeast Wisconsin, not in Chicago. In fact, home sales are down 1.8% when you look at the 5-county metro area, all prices, and that's single-family detached and condos, Dave.
I had to chuckle at the way that the question was couched. Hey,
how has it?
How much has it accelerated the home buying economy?
And maybe he didn't say that. Maybe he said, how did it impact? But clearly, I'm thinking he was, fishing for there's got to be. All right, so then right before the show and right before the break, I ran the numbers for the 5-county Milwaukee area, and if we just isolated those properties that sold
for more than a
$500,000 or more, how did that fare? Was that flat, David, lower than 2018 or higher?
I'm guessing it's flat.
Okay, well, you guessed wrong. Not that, how would you know? It's always fun to,
Third.
Up 10%.
Okay.
100.
Is that like last year was 50 units and this year it's 55?
Well, up 122 units.
Okay.
So the total number of sales is something like 17,000 year to date, and
total units.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is less than a tenth of the market by unit volume.
Okay.
But this makes sense, right? In an intuitive way, it's like when you move the interest rate meter on something where you're likely borrowing a lot more money.
Yeah, matters.
Right? Because I was doing the numbers at 210. Well, now here your 210 purchase price, 230. This is more than double that. You're going to have double the savings. So apparently, and I would think the same thing would be true. And if he talks to somebody in California, you're going to get a different answer, right? Because home prices, and I have read articles about how the drop in rates is helping those. All right, let's turn our attention to something that came out Friday afternoon, a news release from the Treasury Department and the...
Take out the trash is what they call this.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Take out the trash and the Office of Management Budget.
Yeah.
So if you want something not to be covered so much, you release that news on Friday afternoon.
Right.
When everybody's
right about happy hour.
Right there. And so it was the announcement dealing with the 2019 budget deficit.
Be still my heart.
Yeah, well, this is important.
Yes.
As citizens, so this is my little civics, helper. I want to help everybody become a better citizen. But also it matters because when the United States government, when Uncle Sam borrows, what was that number that we had to borrow because we didn't have enough tax revenue this year?
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion, just over $1 trillion.
That's 12 zeros.
One of the technical numbers that they put out was, it was only $984 billion. Well, but then we had some other stuff and it did add up to more than $1 trillion. Yeah. Which now puts the debt held by the public, federal debt held by the public, at about $16.8 trillion, because the federal government holds $4 trillion of its own debt, or something like that, 4, 6, something crazy. Anyway, we're going to use the word trillion again. So here's just your refresher: a trillion versus a billion versus a million. You can, if you bought a $100,000 Ferrari every day and you wanted to burn through $1 million, how many days would it take you?
1,000.
No, $1 million.
Oh,
$1 million.
You said okay.
I said $1 million.
My bad.
10 days.
Thank you.
And you'd be all out of your, money. If you had $1 billion and you were going to buy a $100,000 Ferrari every day, you would have to do that for 27.4 years.
Yikes.
Okay. And you'd end up with 10,000 Ferraris. And by the way, it would take all the parking spots at Brookfield Square and Mayfair combined to park your 10,000 Ferraris.
Over 27
Over
years.
27.4 years. So that's a pretty long time. $1 billion is way more than $1 million, because $1 million would be done in 10 days.
Yeah.
Now, what about $1 trillion? It would take you 27,397 years
Buying a 100,000 Ferrari every day.
every day to burn through $1 trillion. You would then end up with 10 million Ferraris.
Sweet.
And if you could preserve them
Yes.
over that long period of time, bumper to bumper, you park them, you cover the whole city of Muskego. All right, so $1 trillion is way more than $1 billion. Oh, man. All right, time for another break. When we come back, we'll finish up your little civics and why this is important relative to mortgage rates.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on AM 620 WTMJ.
Helping you find a place to call home. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
All right, so we're talking about the federal budget deficit and how we borrowed an extra $1 trillion last year. And so the reason why that impacts mortgage rates potentially is that is increased supply.
It has to get funded.
That's right. Somebody has to be willing to buy that $1 trillion along with the $1.2 trillion of fresh mortgage debt that gets produced every year.
Yeah.
It's $2 trillion in mortgages, but a bunch of them are refis, so it's about $1.2 trillion of fresh. By the way, auto loans are $600 billion, so a little less than $1 trillion.
Well, and this is also in competition with any other debt available in the world.
That's
Would you like to
right.
buy some Norwegian, debt? Maybe they don't have any.
So we spent $1 trillion more than we brought in. Let's talk about sources of revenue, David. What's the biggest source of revenue for the federal government? Payroll taxes, individual income taxes, or corporate taxes?
Individual income tax.
That is correct. 1.7 trillion, or roughly half of the 3.5 trillion we brought in. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, often referred to as FICA or payroll taxes, brought in another cool $1.25 trillion. Now, keep in mind, half of that comes from individuals and half from companies like Accunet Mortgage. We chip in, Dave,
Yay.
on your FICA.
Right back at you.
There you go. So, by the way, the amount we spent on those three things, Social Security, Medicaid, which is federal health insurance for low-income folks.
Yep.
In Wisconsin, we call it Badger Care.
Yep.
And then Medicare, which is federal health insurance for everybody over 65. Well, we spent $2 trillion. Only took in $1.25. Corporate income tax. Okay, a mere $230 billion, less than $0.25 trillion. That is so. Individuals pay 7 times more income tax than corporations. At just under $0.1 trillion, $99 billion, are excise taxes. I'm like, what the heck are those? Gasoline tax, airport tax, stuff like that.
Okay.
The much ballyhooed and thing that's been pushing mortgage rates around, trade tariffs, duties and customs. A mere $71 billion, 2/100ths of the overall federal budget.
Drop in the bucket.
Income. Another thing near and dear to us, FDIC insurance premiums, $52 billion. And the good old gift and estate taxes. A cool $17 billion.
Wow.
Just over nothing. 0.5%. All right, and then lastly, how did we spend all that money? I just told you, Medicare and Medicaid, $1.15 trillion.
I have this off the top of my head. Military spending, $600 billion, give
You
or
are
take.
correct.
Boom.
Number 3. That's 7/10 roughly of $1 trillion, or 15% of all the money. Social Security is $1 trillion. By the way, when we add up Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and defense, we are already at 66%. Boom. Everything else doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right. So the point of that is, right now it's all good because there is a huge appetite for interest rate bearing investments in the world. And America's looking really good, right?
Because we have a positive interest rate.
Right.
Yeah.
We're at, what is the 10-year treasury end at? Like 1.8?
1.8.
And what did you say Greece?
1.19.
Wait, lower?
Lower.
Than the U.S. of A?
Yes.
And of
France
course,
is now negative too. Yeah.
And so lots of the world is negative. So luckily, the fact that we have a we're actually paying interest on our debt.
Yeah.
And then keep in mind, mortgages, when they get bundled together and then guaranteed by the Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA or VA, those are really kind of attractive.
Correct.
Right? Because if we're making loans today at 3.875 after the loan servicer gets their cut and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac get their cut for guaranteeing the loan, that is yielding somebody 3%.
Yeah.
And so, there are people out there that are going, hey, Rod, I like to own some American mortgages at a yield of 3, or some U.S. Treasuries at 1.8, or what I prefer, Greek debt.
Or some Spanish debt at 0.27.
Wow,
Pass.
0.27. Okay. So it's all one big ecosystem, folks, and we're lucky that rates are where they are. By the way, I did look up the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac prediction. Sorry, this is just Fannie Mae.
Sorcery of the future.
That's right. So in September, they were predicting that the 30-year fixed rate would be as low as 3.4% all next year. Well, they revised that up, and they said now we think it's going to be 3.6 for the first half of 2020, and then it's going to drop down to 3.5 for the last half as the economy cools. But right now, man, I'm here to tell you, we're going to cover this after the news. Yeah. We're at 3.875.
Yeah, but again, people buy houses because you're having a baby.
That's right.
You got married because you want to move someplace warm.
Yep.
The interest rate's just the thing that gets you there.
That's right. Yeah. And people, right. So we see no decrease or increase in demand on that 1% fluctuation. All right. Yeah. When we come back, we're going to do a little interest rate talk because the Federal Reserve is meeting on Wednesday.
Yep.
And then I've also got Freddie Mac 5 myths that are not true. Or I guess that means they are a myth.
Yes.
Of HGTV.
Expert advice on buying a home. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
All right, if you've got a comment or a question, and we do have one we'll get to later here in the second half about inheriting a home, you can call or text us on the Accunet Mortgage Talk and text line, which is 414-799-1620.
Like you said maybe a couple weeks ago, aren't you glad that nobody else has that name and number?
Yeah, I am keeping that. Don't tell the guys over there. Okay, anyway. So, hey, the Freddie Mac Primary Mortgage Market Survey, which comes out every Thursday, which is really reflective of most of the rates from Tuesday. So they gather all these rates on Tuesday, then they publish them on Thursday. They said, so as of Tuesday, 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 3.75. If you're willing to pay all the closing costs plus an extra half a point, or in other words, an extra $1,000 to the lender on a $200,000 loan. So unfortunately, though, rates kept creeping up during the course of the week, and most notably on Friday.
Yeah.
Why on Friday, David? Did you catch that? It's because the U.S. Trade Representative, whose name is
Mr. I have no idea.
Leitzinger, I think.
Okay.
Announced that we are close to a written phase 1 trade deal with China.
You mean not just like the spit in my palm, hey, you guys promised to buy some agricultural goods?
You buy some pork and some soybeans, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's still not out there. But that's why rates dropped in August and September. It was because of all this extra trade tariffs we're going to put on.
Economic friction.
Not because of the Federal Reserve, which we'll talk about in a second. So with that backdrop, David, where did we end the week at low overhead Accunet?
Yeah, so a 30-year fixed, you could fetch 3.875% if you were willing to pay a quarter of a point.
Okay.
The APR would be 3.9%.
So what would our total loan cost be?
$1,500.
Okay, so $1,500, which is the same as other, or lower probably than other lenders. Certainly lower than Schmicken.
Yeah, they're charging an arm and a leg. But if you wanted to hang on to 3.99%, which is still a full percent lower than last year, and even folks who bought homes, in January and February,
true that,
early spring, 3.99%, only $900 in cost. APR's 4.0 on the nose.
Oh.
So
creeping up a little bit. Still,
it's all relative.
It's all relative. It's all relative to
I was helping somebody, to your point on you getting interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. A home buyer who had bought their home last year, and then it closed earlier this spring at 4.75%. Well, gosh darn it, they wanted to buy a bigger house.
Yeah.
So they were, strapping up and getting into their nearly $500,000 house.
Right.
And now they're gonna refinance and save a full percent.
That's right.
But that's just a windfall. That's
Yeah, he would have bought, right. It wasn't like, I'm only going to buy if my rate starts with a 3.
Yeah, and so, for them, I mean, I know we say rates have, crept up a little bit, but even it's all relative. If you're sitting at 4.75%. Yeah, what's that?
Did he finally lock in?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
We're going to go. So.
And a 15-year, do you have that handy?
I knew
all
you
right.
were gonna ask me that.
You didn't get
but
that.
talk about the Fed on
Okay, so
Wednesday.
the Federal Reserve is meeting on Wednesday, and the Fed Funds futures market predicts there is only a 93% chance of the Fed cutting rates another quarter. So, Dave, does that mean rates will drop 0.25% in the mortgage world on Wednesday?
No.
No. Why is that?
Because the prime rate, well, it would be linked to your home equity line of credit,
so
or maybe
your
your
home
credit
equity,
card.
Yep, your home equity line of credit and your
But
credit card rate will drop.
They're apples and zucchinis.
Right. Because the Fed funds rate, which is the only thing the Fed controls, is the overnight rate that banks pay each other to borrow money from each other. And so that's overnight. And the 30-year fixed rate is, 3 decades. A fixed rate. Plus, on top of all that, we already assume it's going to happen. So today's rates, Friday's rates, tomorrow's rates all assume, because 93% is pretty high probability.
Yeah, somebody knows something.
If they didn't do something, maybe that would be good. No, bad? I don't know. If they didn't do anything, maybe that would.
Well, as they've tried to telegraph, they're trying to vaccinate the economy.
Yes, one more time. So that'd be the third dosage of vaccination.
Yeah.
All right, so rates are still good.
Still a prime time.
Now, what we're going to talk about next is the 5 myths of reality real estate TV. So I said the name of it, which I probably shouldn't have. 5 home buying reality TV myths, one of which is always buy in spring. They're calling that a myth.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to cover those 5 myths and find out what Millennial David thinks and what Baby Boomer Brian thinks about the 5 myths when we come back. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on AM 620 WTMJ.
Find a place to call home without the headache. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
All right, we're going to talk about the 5 home buying reality TV myths put out there by Freddie Mac on their blog. And they make note that the popularity of home and renovation TV
it looks so easy.
Is booming. HGTV was ranked 4th as America's most watched basic cable network with over 1.3 primetime viewers. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
All right, so myth number 1, always buy in spring. And so their writer writes from Freddie Mac that, certainly that's when there are the most homes listed for sale. But if you buy in winter, I think I have a blog post on this too. You do have less selection, but who cares if you find the home that you like? So, yes,
I think that's always true, right?
The pickings may be slimmer,
yeah.
But then they also point out sellers tend to be more highly motivated. I would agree with that.
Okay.
Hey, I've got a reason that I'm selling in November.
Yeah.
Or October. And when sellers are motivated, they're likely to negotiate more on price, closing costs, or other terms. I bought the house that we live in November and closed in December.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I sold the house we lived in for 17 years in Brookfield in November.
Yeah.
So when did you buy your house? When you bought your house? October?
December.
See, we are nothing
Same
but
with Tim and Grace.
We are the Game of Thrones Winterfell
Yeah.
winter home buyers. Okay. Item number 2, you don't need a real estate agent. A TV program may lead you to believe that real estate agents just appear to walk you through a handful of houses. Rather,
Please have a buyer's agent.
Yeah, please have a buyer's agent, which means that you either sign a buyer's agency.
They're on Team U. Not team seller, they're on team U,
That's
team
right.
buyer.
And I had one, if we have time to tell a story, where the buyer was surprised when I said, that agent who helped you write the offer is not your agent. He said, what?
Yeah.
No, look at the top line of the contract. It says he's a sub-agent of the seller.
Yeah.
All right. Myth number 3. So we agree. And have a good agent. If you need help finding a good agent.
We know who the good ones are.
Yep. We'll help you find one. Myth number 3, you'll find your dream home right away.
You might find it, but will you win?
That's right. It may take some hunting
Heartburn.
And sometimes, very, very rarely, you'll find the property that you love, right away. And then that kind of is spooky to both you and the good real estate agent. Like, you really want to buy the first home you looked at? Mm-hmm. but it does happen. I'd say it's rare. And then sometimes, and we can help you craft your offer with your real estate agent to heighten your chances of winning. We certainly think that the Rock Solid Guaranteed Pre-Approval is part of that formula.
Yes.
Because we're promising you and the seller in writing that if we cannot make good on that Rock Solid Pre-Approval letter, we're going to cut a check for $1,000 to you as the buyer, which would help reimburse you for your appraisal and inspection if we blew it.
Yeah.
And we'll also write a check for $1,000 to the seller.
Yeah.
If we didn't do a good job on our research. David, you have something to say?
I was going to say, John Vels, Senior Vice President at Accunet, who, in charge of Rock Solids, has done hundreds of Rock Solids, and we've only paid out on one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know what we were doing on VA loans at one point, but now we do.
Yeah.
Myth number 4, it's normal to go over your budget. So apparently, I don't watch HGTV, but apparently they're always going over budget, probably on the remodeling. We're going to take this down, we're going to move this wall and rip out the kitchen and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so Freddie Mac warns against that, okay?
Going over budget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're here to tell you that, we're going to pre-approve you when we, or any lender pre-approves you. We're actually pre-approving you for a payment. A lot of people think it's a purchase price. Mm-hmm. No, it's a payment.
Yeah.
We're saying this is how much you can afford per month. Now, does the price you pay for the home have something to do with that? Of course it does. And so does the money you have for the down payment. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of all those things. The price, the down payment, the property taxes, which is lost on many first-time home buyers.
Mom and I were talking last night, that can impact, for example, Shorewood has some expensive property taxes compared to Pewaukee.
Oh, for sure.
That moves the needle for sure.
Yep. So really approving it for payment. But then if you're on the margin, paying that extra $5,000 to get the home rather than losing the home is not that big a deal when it comes to monthly payment or cash out of your pocket.
Correct.
Depending on where you are. And the last myth, according to Freddie Mac, which I would agree with, is renovations are easy. No, they're not.
No.
There are some people like your brother-in-law, my son-in-law's brother, Ben Holdman, who really can do lots of stuff.
Yes.
And then there's the rest of the people.
Yeah.
And remember how I helped my niece with that home?
Yes, your own home flipping
that was
extravaganza.
Bad. Yeah, to the tune of many thousands of dollars. All right. So those are the 5 myths of reality TV shows. So proceed with caution. And
when we come back,
what are we going to talk about?
I want to talk about the text that we got into the Accunet Talking
Oh,
text
yeah,
line.
yeah. And then I've got a Quicken story as well. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on Wisconsin's radio station, AM 620, WTMJ.
Important home buying questions and answers you can count on. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on WTMJ.
All right, so we got a text earlier in the show. David, what did our texting listener ask?
If I receive a quarter portion of an inherited home with no mortgage, but I have debt, is it still possible for me to buy out my siblings and be able to pay off some debt with my portion of the inheritance?
All right, so that's a multi-layered question. The answer is maybe.
Right.
And so first of all, it's going to depend on the occupancy of the subject property.
Yep.
Is anybody living in it? Is it a lake home that's a second home? Do you, the fellow with the debt, are you going to go live in the property? That would be the best, owner-occupied or a vacation home. But, if you own a home in Wauwatosa and this home is in Milwaukee and it's like vacant, that's not a second home.
Right.
And nobody's going to believe that you're going to go and live there.
Yeah.
Right. If you own a nicer home.
Yeah.
Than
your parents.
And so in general, you can pull out equity up to 80% of the value of the home.
Yep.
So step number 1 is going to have to be, how are you going to figure out what you need to buy out your siblings? Is that going to be based on our appraisal? Because we're going to have to do an appraisal to lend you the money to buy out your siblings.
Right.
Then you're going to have theoretically 25% equity, right? Because you own 25%, which only leaves 5% of the value of the home that you can extract
Because you're giving the other 75 to your three siblings.
To your three siblings,
Yeah.
right? So it's not going to be that much, depending on the house is worth 200,000. Maybe you can extract 10 grand. Can you do cash out up to 80 LTV on? I think you can on an investment property. We'll come back to you with that. All right. So that's the answer to that question, which is it depends. You can give us a call tomorrow at the office, 262-781-1100.
Yeah.
David will talk to you.
Sure.
At least get you started.
Yeah.
Find out where you are. All right. Then I had a nice experience this last week, David, where an acquaintance of mine that I play golf with every once in a while. Over to you, Dave.
Cash out on an investment property, single unit, 75% of the value.
Ooh, so yeah, if it's not a second home and it's not your primary residence, then no, you can't take any cash out.
Yeah, all right. But you were...
All right, so a guy that I played golf with once, and is a friend of another guy, anyway, calls up and says, hey, I think I want to refinance out of my balloon construction loan.
Oh, okay.
My current rate is 4.125. What do you have for me? So I emailed him some numbers on Friday, a week ago Friday, and it's a bigger loan size. And so remember, in mortgage lending, bigger's better in terms of pricing. Mm-hmm. So I was able to email him back and say, you know what? Here's some options. I can do 3.5 for you with this much in closing costs. I can do 3.625 with, I think it was like $2,000 in closing costs. Or I could do 3.75 with, are you ready? $256 of costs.
Hey-o.
Hello. So he calls or emails me on Monday and says, let's go with that. And then when I talk to him, he says, yeah, I had clicked on some ad online earlier in October, and once I obtained his credit report, I can tell you it was exactly October 7th. And as a result of that click on some, lending tree type advertisement, he got bombarded with about 15 calls. So
that's all?
If you want to get blasted, go ahead and click on the lending tree.
Put your burner phone number in there.
Any other, what is it? Is there another one out there like that? Loan Depot or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, got bombarded with those inquiries, eventually somehow agreed to have Quicken Loans obtain his credit report. So as of the Friday, a week ago Friday, Quicken Loans was quoting him 3.75 with $10,000 of closing costs. Then when he talked to the chap, who he said was very nice and very good at his job,
I'm sure.
on Monday of this past week, they could cut that in half down to $5,000.
Discount for you.
Just for you on
Today.
a day like today. If you act
Only
before
if you buy by 4 p.m.
4 p.m., I can get that on a 3.75 with $5,000 of closing costs. And that's when Howard sprung it on him, and he said, well, I got a friend in the business, and he can do 3.75 with 256. And he said, run. We can't touch that.
Wow.
And so Howard is very pleased.
Excellent. As are we.
As are we. That's right. So, and I watch the NCAA football. I watch the World Series, and those guys are all over it. And now you know how they pay.
Right.
They pay with your dollars.
Yeah, right. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart.
They are definitely not doing that. Had that FHA loan closed yesterday, the one with the handrail that needed to be put in.
Oh, yeah.
Where the real estate agent kind of lit me up, and we were having problems on that deal, getting the actual appraisal in our hands.
Yeah.
That was kind of a very unique situation. But once we got it, it became obvious that, yep, you have 5 stairs, and it was an FHA loan. And so our home buyer was given permission by the home seller to put in a handrail.
Fantastic.
For those 5 steps, and shazam.
Okay.
We're closing yesterday, so that's a happy ending.
Turns out being nice actually solves problems and gets things done.
Yeah, and they were very happy with us. Very, very, very happy with us. All right, so let's see. I think we have another show next week.
Yes.
All right.
Me and Tim.
Okay, you and Tim. That's right. I will be on vacation, so you guys do a good job.
Thank you.
And remember that, as Freddie Mac said,
yes,
winter's a good time to buy.
Yeah.
Those sellers be happy to get your offer.
What the Wickard family's always done.
That's what we're winter shoppers.
Yeah.
And so we can help you become that winter shopper with a rock-solid guaranteed pre-approval. All you got to do to get started is click on the blue button at Accunet.com. That's all we have time for today. You've been listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on AM 620 WTMJ. The proceeding was a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show are solely that of the hosts or guests of Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors, and not WTMJ Radio or Good Karma Brands Milwaukee, LLC.